Hey there. Alright, just want to wait until some more people show up before I really get into things here. Honestly, today I'm been kind of tired, but I think I'll be able to make it through this. Hey there. There we go. Just trying to fix up a little problem with the branch there. You can see here that I applied a subdivision surface modifier to the level, make it look a little bit more smooth. And you can see what it looks like with and without it. You can see without it, it looks like the last time I showed it to you. But then with it, it makes it so that everything's a little bit more rounded when I actually export the model. Still working on it, obviously, but it looks a lot nicer. Well, might as well go over some of the things I've changed. Because the movement system, for one, is now pretty different. And hopefully I can... Actually, no, let me... maximize on play and gizmos on. So you can get full look. And you can see now that when I move, this little cylinder here goes out in front of me. And what that is actually the nav mesh agent. It no longer is in control of actually moving the character. Like, it used to be that nav mesh agent here was actually a static part of this, and it was actually in control of moving the characters around everything, and it sort of acts like another collider. But the problem with it was when I would go to an area like this that had like a sloped surface, because the problem with the nav mesh agent is that when you, or the nav mesh itself, is that when you bake it, it's not always exact to the level's geometry. And sometimes there's some oddities that it can end up with. Like, the agent will technically be, I keep saying the agent, but the nav mesh will like be a little bit raised up above the surface. And sometimes it's not a problem, but with this spot in particular, it ended up making it so that at certain spots the character would like kind of move up and down, and at certain points their feet weren't even planted on the ground at all. So it looked a little messy. But what I ended up doing, go in here, go up to top. And right up here, I'd always had the update rotation set to false here, but now it's also update position, and I set that to false, and that makes it so that the agent doesn't actually move the character. Instead, what the agent does now is it's almost like sort of like a tester for if there's a walkable surface in front of you. So you saw how it like moves out in front of the character when they're walking, and it changes positions depending on where you're pressing. And all it's essentially doing is saying if there is a walkable surface in front of you, because if there is nothing in front of you that can be walked in front of, that agent does not move, or it will stop at a certain point. So now when I do the move calculation in here, once I get the movement value, I essentially the this here agent next position, this is what's setting the agent to try to move to wherever you're pressing, and if it can do that, then it'll move in that direction. but also it's also now used for controlling the direction that the character faces. So you can see right here, next position, it sets it to wherever you are currently plus the direction that you're moving. So in a way, it almost also kind of looks like a virtual joystick, because you can see how it sort of slowly moves out and then moves back in. So you can kind of use it to judge like where the character is going, at least when testing. As you go back down here some. And actually, also when it actually go back up. Sorry, I shot the gun a little. Well, it actually does two different things with the movement here. I forgot to say. First of all, it sets next position to where you are plus the movement. Now, the thing about doing this is that even if you tell the agent to move to a certain spot, if that spot does not have nav mesh data, then it won't move beyond a certain point. And so once it's set to there, what I then do is I take whatever its current position is, be it, you know, where it was supposed to be set or where it currently is, and I then subtract the position of the player, and that gets sort of a true movement value. So this ensures that the character can't move anywhere that the nav mesh isn't moving, because, you know, if I didn't do that, then the characters would literally be able to do things like walk off cliffs. Actually, go into navigation here. You see, this is all the nav mesh. These blue areas are walkable, and you can see it's not like when you bake a nav mesh, it's not completely perfect. But then there are ways around it. It doesn't really have to be. So yeah, say you were right at the edge of the cliff here and you still wanted to move in this direction, the nav mesh would be given those coordinates, but since it can't go there, it will just kind of snap to wherever the closest position is on here. And which is what I wanted, because I like the advantages of the nav mesh, which is that you can't have a character just move anywhere, and you can set it up without actually having to put in like a whole bunch of invisible walls in the form of extra geometry. You know, instead you can just use the nav mesh itself, and it acts as its own invisible wall. So, you know, you can keep the character actually on path and not doing things that you don't want them to do. Oops. Forgot to select the character before I did that. So I'll show you here. Yeah, you can see here suddenly nav mesh agent, it will not move off of here. Instead, it just kind of goes to wherever the closest position is that it can go. And oh, that was almost and Kala is now falling. Not good. Okay, maybe there's still some issues that need to be sorted out with this. And one thing I'd probably do is and find it, increase the agent radius. You have to do that, then it sets the new nav mesh a little bit further away from there. But yeah, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect right now. But it's definitely a lot better than it was. You know, this now makes it so that now for collision, it actually uses the character's capsule collider. So, and it will, stay connected to the ground geometry. Because yeah, you can see parts in the nav mesh where things don't line up like completely 100%. Like, yeah, you can see right here the blue walkable part is kind of hovering above the geometry there, and at some points it kind of goes underneath it. And doing this, baking a height mesh alongside it, it helps, but it's still not perfect. The height mesh definitely works a lot better with Unity's built-in terrain system, but Unity's terrain system also can't do things like this. It can only basically make hills and mountains. You can't make like any holes or really like complex geometric shapes. Make sure this is also good. Okay, so that red spot actually is kind of, it's setting some areas unwalkable that I do still want to be walkable, so that's better. Or maybe not. Let's try this again. Let's look at, make a character go to this spot here. Okay, doesn't seem to actually be any trouble. Must have just been an intersection between the height map and the navigation. Okay. So that's good. Anyway, let's move on to what I actually wanted to focus on today, which is treasure chests. Right here, you can actually see this is actually more or less the original treasure chest model that I had when I was still going to make this game a dungeon crawler, but I did make the model a little bit nicer. I got rid of some of the extra geometry to it. And save that and go back in here. And show you kind of how this works. So I've had animations for this since the very beginning. See here, a lock comes out, flips over, goes back in, and then whoop, entire thing opens up. And this animation should already be a part of it. And I may add more to this a bit later, because this base model was a little bit simple, because with the dungeon crawler, you know, you'd only be facing it from the front. You wouldn't be able to look at it from any other angles. So I may want to add in some more things, like maybe actually have some sort of like, you know, like robotic arms that actually have the top of the chest connected up to the main body. Oops. And then also what I want to do is, once the lock pushes back in, I want this red light to then turn green. And we are going to try that out. And it's all good there. Okay, and the animation is in there. Perfect. The animation actually go from 1 to 61. So start to 1 and to 61. Don't need the time to loop, because once it's open, I want it to stay open. I'll worry about events in just a moment. And let's go ahead and rename this animation too. apply. Okay, so now that's set up there. Next thing I want to do is separate out this animation so I can actually work on it in Unity. A D. And there we go. And I can drag the chest right in here. And go into animation. And yeah, for this, I also want to have, oops, collapse that, make some room. Let's create, and yeah, an animator controller. Let's call that chest. And yes, there will be a mimic version of this in the future. It'll be kind of a variant, like I'm still kind of thinking about how I'm going to do the mimic version of this. Like, I'm thinking of actually having the lock like kind of like turn out to be like, you know, this like robotic eye, and then maybe having so like the bottom of it like split into four, and then they just kind of like fold out into legs. So got this now. And you can drag and drop that. Let's create a state in here. Okay, so now I can actually see this doing that in game. Yeah, first of all, let's try to find the point in the animation. Where the lock goes back in finally. Right there. And so we can have the lock change color. Let's add an event. And don't have anything selected there currently. That's because there's no script. So one thing that we will need to do is create a new script for treasure chests. These are existing scripts. Don't want that. Want a new one. And Let's call this script interactable object. I'm gonna edit this. I just need to reload everything. And to start with, definitely need to have a reference to the animator here. And then in start, alright, so now I have a reference to the animator that's attached to this, so we can actually control that from the script. And right off the bat, I want to add in a function here. Oops. There we go. And this will just be a function to just change the color of the little front light there. And actually, you can get rid of these components here. Oops. So that simplifies that down. So also what we'll need is a reference here to the light. And I probably want it to be a material reference. Or no, wait, no. I want it to be, yeah, skin mesh renderer actually. So with this, when I actually set up the reference, see here, I need to put in transform.getChild2, and what that does is, because the script is essentially part of this right here, and underneath it in this hierarchy are what are called child objects. And you may be wondering, well, the light is actually the third child in here, so why did you type in 2? And the reason for that is because for some reason in programming it doesn't start with 1, it starts with 0. So in order, these would be child 0, 1, and 2. So if you ever use Unity, yeah, that's probably going to catch you a few times. It has me. Especially when you're dealing with children of children. But yeah, this just gets a second child and it gets its skin mesh renderer component, and then I have a nice little easy variable to refer to it by. And also, and actually for this variable, I want to make this public so that I can actually set it in the editor. Save that. And if I go, yeah, now there's a little option to put in a material on there. And actually I want to change the name of this one. That one's going to be chest light closed. And actually, let's go ahead and duplicate that. Rename it chest light open, and then change the color to green. So it's all there. Pop that into there. And now with the light change, you see it's very simple right here, just light.material equals light color. So this should just change the color of that. So go back in here, click on the event that I made before, and I can just go ahead and click light change right there. So and this should just have it so that when it reaches this part of the animation, it will go ahead and make a call to that function and change the light color. Let's just make sure that this is all. And let's just see here. Oh, and it looks like it worked. You can see that the light there is now green. The chest is open. Now, obviously, you don't want it just opening on its own. You want it to open when the player interacts with it. And actually, first of all, this chest is not really a physical object currently. What I need to do is add a physics, and let's add a box collider to this. Stretch that out a little bit. Maybe make it a little bit bigger than the chest itself. Okay, so now there's a collider attached to it. So, in theory, yep, cannot go past it. It is a physical object now. Perfect. You kind of clip through the doors there, but that's not as big of a deal as actually being able to walk through the chest itself. So we've got that there. And let's actually add in another collider to this. Game object, create empty. And we are just going to parent that onto this. And let's add a component to this. And this will be a sphere collider. And let's increase the radius of this. About 225. But instead of this being a physical collider, I want this to be a trigger, which means I'll be able to walk right through it, and it can also send information to whatever enters its radius. And this will involve messing with both the script I just created, and also I want to add something onto the user input script here. So let's open that up as well. Let's go back to the interactable object script. And type in void. Right here, the onTrigger enter function. This is actually a Unity default function, and this is just used for passing and also getting information on whatever enters into the radius here that I just defined. You know, come to think of it, let me copy component. Actually, I think I can just get rid of that, and I think you can actually have two colliders or multiple colliders on one object. So there we go. And then with this, this right here, this is just information on which collider enters into its area. Which, right here, characters all have a capsule collider attached to them. And all I want to do is just check if whatever entered in there has the tag of player attached to it. So then if letter see right there, just checks if this is the player or not. If it's not them, and you can just completely ignore everything. And in here, I want to add in a brand new Boolean value. So I actually want to make this public. So right there, I'm going to set that to true. Copy and paste this. Oh, glad you asked. With the public right here, all this means is that this is something that can be changed from any script. And also, when you declare something as public, you also... Hold on. Come on. Yeah. So yeah, I declared that public, and you can see that I can actually change and interact with it within the editor here. And there is another way that you can do that, but declaring as public is the most easy. And granted, there's some variables that you do want to keep private. You don't really want everything to be able to be changeable from outside of the script. And also, parent and child are kind of exactly what they sound like. Like right here with the chest, this right here is a parent object. So you see, and then everything below this in the hierarchy is a child of that object. And then also the armature part here, this is in turn also a parent to all of these parts beneath it. So it's just a way of denoting where everything falls in the hierarchies that you've set up here. And you usually want to you want to parent objects to each other if they are usable together. Like all the characters here, each individual part of them, the face, the body, everything, these are all child objects of the overall character component right here. And you obviously want to have all those connected because they all work together. They don't really serve much function on their own. So set up all of that. also I want to create another new function here. Actually have a function that controls interaction, and also in the chest here, first of all, probably create another state. This is the default, and then let's add in, just add in a trigger here. Just call that open, and make a transition from these two. So you get rid of has exit time. And under conditions, yep, just have to say it's open. Okay, I just want to have it so that when we interact with this, that there, and then go back into user input here. And so add something onto here. If that onto there. Perfect. And also want to have an on trigger exit below this. So yeah, just as there is non-trigger enter, I also want to have an on-trigger exit, which is called right after you leave that little sphere of influence. And it just does the opposite of what this does. It says that no, there's nothing you can interact with, and it also sets the interactable variable to null, which just means nothing's in there. So got all that set up, and what's this? Okay. Now. And it works! Perfect! Yep, I just entered in that little area. And well, let's see, not do maximize on play. And just go in here. Select that. Just get a representation. And yeah, I'm clicking around outside of here. Nothing's happening. You go in, go out, nothing's happening. Oh, uh-oh. That should not have happened. Okay, so something's up there. Let me... Oh, forgot to capitalize him. C# is case sensitive. Let's see if this works. Yep. Exited. Can't interact. Can't. Enter. There we go. Now part of what I also want to do, just as an idea moving forward, is I'll likely want the character to actually, stop, and then probably kneel down, maybe interact with the chest. Not have them actually able to move around while the chest is still opening. But the core idea is here, and it works. So this is perfect. Just make sure to save all this. So, yeah, this was pretty successful. We actually have means to interact with objects now. And you'll see that I named the script interactable object. It's because even though I'm using this purely for the chest right now, I probably want to have this be a sort of reusable script that I can have other scripts derived from. So I'd have interactable object as the base, and then I'll have a specific chest script, but then I also might have like a script for interacting with NPCs. So, I mean, this is a principle that can be applied to pretty much everything. It can be applied to this, it can be applied to the gate over here once that's finished. Oh, hey, I can show you actually what I just did. Recently just put a treasure chest into the game and pretty much set it up to be usable. You can see here it has, first of all, a box collider to keep you from clipping into it. But it also has a sphere collider over here that acts as a trigger for being able to interact with it. You can see right now I'm actually clicking my mouse, nothing's happening. If I go into it and then go out and click, nothing happens. But if I stay in here and click, see the chest opens up. And also when it opens, you saw like the little light on it turns from red to green. And I've already gone over this before, but I can tell you how I changed the movement. More or less. I was just saying that this chest model here is kind of a leftover from when I was still going to make this a dungeon crawler. But, you know, I do want chests to kind of maintain this look. I'm probably going to add more to it, like maybe add some, like I said, some armatures there that will, you know, so that the chest top pieces will actually be connected to the main body. But yeah, this is kind of what I wanted to have to look like. It'll be sort of technological looking chest. But then I was saying about how now you can see the nav mesh agent is not connected to the character anymore. It moves forward and acts as just sort of a tester to see if there is movable area in front of you. And if there isn't, you see it just kind of doesn't let you move. Now, saying that this corrects the issue I'd been having with the nav mesh, which is that it doesn't really stick to the terrain perfectly. Sometimes it will sink into the terrain or even hover above it. And so this makes it so that the actual collider will handle, you know, whether it will actually be sort of serving its purpose. You know, this collider will have you, you know, actually be interacting with the collider on the ground. Because I was saying before, sometimes when I would go down here, the character's feet would actually be completely off the ground just because of the way that the nav mesh works. So this way works a lot better. But yeah, I went over setting up the chest here to be usable, and so you can open it, interact with it, and it all went pretty damn well. But it's about that time for me to head out, but I'm glad that you were all able to come here and I was able to show this off, because this, like I said, this went really well. So anyways, I'll head off now, and thanks everyone for coming in today, and hope to have even more to show you next week.